So let's create a new page, and this page will going to help us grab client information. So client info, and we will build this page in steps, as I want to talk about a few concepts here. There is a concept of postback. You understand what postback means in a web server environment? Postback means when a page calls itself, like a recursive call, but it's not a continuous call. So sometimes what happens is you fill out a form and you hit the submit button, and the submission goes back to the same page. So the first time the page runs, it checks to see if form elements are empty. It doesn't run that JSP code that is supposed to process the form. And it only shows you the form. And it happens a lot in those kind of pages that you might have seen, that right up top is the form element, and you say, okay, I want to see the information of customer 101, and you click OK, and then it keeps that customer 101 form up there and just loads information of the customer down below. And then you change the customer and click go, and then it loads that information right there again. So it just keeps going in that fashion. That's basically postback. So when you submit back to the same page. And we do that a lot in some cases. So we're going to see what a postback is here. Also, when you write a form in HTML, form has two properties, action and method. Do you know the difference? HTML form's action property and HTML form method property. HTML form action property is where you write the name of the page to which you want the form to be submitted to. It could be the same page, it could be a different page. Method is how you want the submission to happen. And method only has two values, post, get. Post means the value that you are sending over to the HTML form, through the HTML form to the web page, will not show in the address bar. That's post. When you want them to show in the address bar, it's get. Get is usually used when you submit information from a page back to itself or to another page in a web URL, like shopping carts. Shopping carts, all of those are not buttons, they're actually links. But generally for forms, you don't do get, you use post. Let me show you an example. Look at the URL of the web advisor. Notice this question mark. The question mark says that up to this point is the URL. After that is the list of the values that one page is passing to another. Type is the name of the variable. M is the value. Ampersand is a separator between two variables. Next variable is PID. Core web main is the value. Token ID is the variable, and this is the value. So this is how a page can pass values to another page without using any forms in between. So that's why the get is used. So we will actually use get in our example so that you learn how you can pass values from one page to another or a page back to itself when you don't have a form. So let's put over here a URL where I want to submit my page back to itself. Now remember that JSP is case sensitive, so you have to make sure that the pages are spelled correctly, even to the case. Yep, I did. So you run as on server, and then you click, and then you notice nothing happens because it's just posting back to itself. Okay, so we will now try to add a parameter list. Action equals to get header. So my variable is action, and my value for that variable is get header. Now you run this page and you click on the link again, and this time check your URL. Your URL will now load with a variable and a value. So now if I right click run as on server and I click on this link, check the URL. It now loads the URL question mark variable equals to a value. So this approach is get, where you post a value. So what we will do next is we will write an if-else structure here. We'll have an if condition which will start and end. And then we will have an else to go with this if, and it will be the else that will show this URL. So this is my if-else structure. Now I'm going to build my if. Again, I'm using request object because I'm requesting something from the client. Dot get parameter. So anything that's passed into a URL is the parameter. And the name of the value that I'm seeking, the name of the property that I'm seeking is action. So it will going to give me the value of action. And I'm using a local variable action. So it doesn't really matter if you have the variable name the same as the parameter or different. It doesn't make a difference. If action is not equals to null and action dot equals get header. And again, I'm using a built-in function of string class equals that allows me to compare to string values. So my if condition will run only and only if my action is not equals to null and the value is actually get header. Otherwise, my else will run. Okay. Then I will use a Java built-in enumeration class. It's a collection class. And I will call the built-in function get header names from the request object, and we're going to give me the list of all the header names, all the information that the client is sending over to the server that's part of the header names. So it returns a collection. Now you will notice that enumeration actually gives you an error because this class does not belong to java.lang package. It belongs to java.util package. So let's learn how you import packages in JSP. So scroll up to the top. Right before you go into HTML, you use a page directive. Okay? Now my previous page directive was language. Now this page directive is import. And this is where I can write my import statement. Java.util is the name of the package. Enumeration is the name of the class. And the moment I write that line, the enumeration error goes away. So this is how you import a package or a class in a package. Now, in the if condition, I'm going to start out with a table. Now this is a good example why you want to break out of your JSP scriptlet to write static HTML. Use a while loop because we do not know the count of the number of header names, so we will use the enumeration object built-in method called has more elements, which would allow my loop to keep traversing till I run out of values. So it reads one element at a time until it runs out of values. Now what I will do is I will grab that value and convert it into a string to store as my header name. And as you know, in my table, the first thing I show is a header name, and this is a good place to use this shortcut so I don't have to keep going back and forth using out.println. So my first column shows a header name, and for my second column within the row, I will use request.getHeader, which is also a built-in function, and pass the header name, so it will going to send me the value for that header in return. So this will generate as many rows as there are elements in the enumeration. And after I close my loop, I have to make sure I close my table before I close my if condition. So loop closing and if condition closing, and in between the two I have my table closing. Now right click on client info and run as on server. So now my URL doesn't show any variables and my page shows a web link. When I click on a web link, now the if condition kicks and else doesn't kicks in, because now action actually has a value of get header. So I get to see all these items and the list of their values. So these are my MIME types. It also tells me that this is the URL that referred to. This is how the marketing campaigns can figure out how did you came to their homepage. So what was the URL that you came from to their page? If you come through Google, they know that you came through a search engine. If you came from one of their pages to one of their pages, then they know that you came from within the site. So this is how they can keep track of how people are coming to their site, who's referring them. Then it also tells them information about your CPU. So this is using AMD 64. So that's how they can know that, what hardware people are using when they're accessing their sites. It's extremely beneficial when people are providing gaming services, so they know exactly the environment of their clients. Then user agent, what browser you used, what Windows operating system you're using. So the code name for Windows 7 is actually Windows NT 6.1. It's 64-bit, and then localhost is running on port 8080. It's a keep alive connection, and this is your session ID. So every time you establish a connection with the server, you get a session ID for that session. As soon as the server sends you a response back, the session ID is canceled or killed. So today we'll learn also how you can keep the session ID alive till you decide to log out. So all this information is being passed from the client over to the server.